Well, here we are at another weekend of Hollywood having egg on their face. It looks like they are being clowned for yet another weekend at the box office. And this weekend, they're actually literally being clowned by the likes of Terrifier 3, which has come out to massive, massive success. And then we've got Joker Fillet of Douche, which is drowning and literally breaking records this weekend with epic, epic failure. And what I want to talk about is what this actually means for the industry, what it means for Hollywood, and why Terrifier 3's success is actually a very, very good sign for people looking to get into film. Another thing that I wanted to mention for just a little bit is a new fan theory that I've heard about this new Joker film and what they are thinking might be the meta-narrative, and I think that this is one that you probably have not heard yet, so let's go ahead and dig into it. Now, as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button before you do anything, and then follow that up with going over to criticalist.com. We are an entertainment reviewing platform, but not a place for critics to come and review. They can, they're welcome to, but their voice doesn't matter any more than your own. This is a platform for the people, by the people, so go ahead and drop a review for something that you have been watching recently. But I'm going to go ahead and dig straight into what this news is with Terrifier 3, and I'm actually pulling up OMB Reviews, Odin, friend of the show, his new article that he did for this Monday, which he does every Monday, which I recommend going and checking out on geeksandgamers.com. But basically what he breaks down here is the success and failure of these two films. So what it says here is Terrifier 3 not only dominated the second weekend of Joker Fillet of Douche, it demolished it and single-handedly proved to Hollywood that their system is not needed for box office success or theatrical distribution. The unrated third installment of the Killer Clown slasher series opened to 18 plus million domestically, while the week 2 drop-off for Joker only managed to bring in $7 million, which is an 81% drop from week 1. Now, this is, like I said, a record-breaking level of failure, and it is quite embarrassing for what's happened with this film, and honestly, it doesn't make me very sad, because if you've seen my review on Criticalist, which I'll pull up after a little while, I really, really dislike this movie. I think it's a bad film. Now, granted, we're talking about Terrifier 3 here, and to be totally honest, I have not watched it and do not plan to see it. I haven't seen any of these films, but they are doing quite well on Criticalist as far as the reviews go, and if you've seen Terrifier 3, make sure to hop over to criticalist.com right now or download it in the app stores and drop your review for it, because we'd love to get the number of people higher to really get a true gauge of what you guys think about this movie. And this just really isn't my style of horror, so I'm not planning on checking it out. But what I do like about it and really admire is the level of just bootstrapping that has gone on with this series, which I didn't realize was the case until now. And Odin really breaks it down well in this article, which I'll put in the show notes. But basically, long story short, this movie, first and foremost, is unrated. Unrated films means that he did not go through the typical channels of getting it vetted by the MPA and going through the steps that movies normally do to get put into theaters. And it used to be that the theater chains were scared of these, but this is already a known franchise, and so I think that they knew that it was going to be that level of violence and gore anyways, so why even go through the trouble of getting it vetted, and why not just market it in that way of being like, it's so gory that, you know, some people are throwing up in the theater. But either way, that's an interesting and smart approach. So for right there out of the gate, they are skipping an entire channel with the film industry by not getting it rated. But then for it to do this well is wild, because you even hear when they talk about box office success, they talk about how sometimes rated R films can be dangerous and hard, and how that is a risk because it lowers the audience and the amount of people that can see it. And all of that really does make sense. But the thing is if you look at the story of this franchise, the first film was made for $35,000 to $55,000, which is peanuts. I mean, especially in this industry, it is peanuts. And I mean, that's like a solid couple months of development fees for Criticalist. So I can definitely relate. This is not a lot of money to make or to spend to make something like this, and then they were able to make a profit of $416,000, which isn't a lot, but it was able to set them up to make another one without needing a big studio or anybody backing them. And so it's been this slow growth to where this movie cost $2 million to make, and that's still nothing for a film like this, which granted, horror is typically cheaper to make, but either way, this was the most that they've ever spent, and now we're looking at an $18 million domestic opening. That's just in the United States, $18 million, and then $34 million globally. So this movie has done gangbusters against a movie like Joker, who has full studio backing, they have the marketing, the advertising, all of these things, and it's at this level of a failure. But the thing is what is Terrifier 3 doing? It is giving fans what they want. It is giving them more of the same, what they expect and what they like to see. And it is also doing it in a very grassroots way, which is extremely admirable. And so they're doing this totally out of the system, where this was in 200 or 2,500 screens, which is a lot for this kind of indie-esque type of film. And as Odin points out here, it proves that theaters don't really need Hollywood to stay afloat, which is a very good sign. So if you are someone that's looking into getting into this industry and looking to make a film, as we've seen with YouTube, and I did a review recently for Milk and Cereal where a movie was released on YouTube exclusively and has done very well. And then now we have things like this having success even in the theater. This is fantastic news, because as we all know, the theater system is, not theater system, but the movie industry as a whole is quite corrupt and has a lot of problems. They really tend to manipulate and twist up what creators are wanting to make, and then they also have a problem with insulting the fans. There are just so many issues internally within Hollywood that if there is a way to bypass it, I definitely think we need to do it. And I think that this weekend is an extreme marker for where we could be just a few years' time or less from now with how other people can succeed with making films. And this is a great sign of what I like to see, and the type of thing that we have always wanted to promote within Criticless. And being that I am outside of tech, I am not in the inside club of that, and wanted to be someone that could give an outside voice. And it is a hard industry to enter into when you don't have these massive budgets, when you don't have these big people backing you. And so I totally understand the uphill battle that these guys went against, and they are succeeding. So big kudos to the Terrifier crew and everybody who's making this film. And I hope that people take the lessons learned from this and continue to do things like this in the future. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention and talk about was about the new Joker movie, and the fact that I have seen this new theory that has come out that people are talking about. And they're actually, it was one guy specifically on TikTok of all places. I know I'm accused of being a TikTok kid. I'm not even going to get into my how I've been dubbed within Criticalist. But basically, this guy was trying to compare Joker to The Shining. Now, I'll go ahead and say that it doesn't hold a candle. It's not going to be what The Shining is going to be, but his point is that with this comparison is that he is wondering if the meta-narrative connected to Joker is similar to the meta-narrative in things like The Shining, where actually what happened was that Stanley Kubrick was getting a lot of his internal emotions and feelings and thoughts out on the screen, but doing it via this story. And people over time started to figure out what he was doing and saying, and it became this, well-known thing that it had a much more meta plot, even though Stephen King was not a fan of the movie, and a lot of book fans weren't either, because it deviated so much, because Stanley Kubrick imprinted himself so much on the movie. Now, with Joker, there are a few problems with this, which, before we even get to those problems, what I wanted to say was that he thinks that the meta-narrative is even a bit different than what you might expect, because what I'm hearing everyone say is essentially that, the fans suck, they're the worst, and this is Todd Phillips' way of saying, screw comic book fans because they're evil pieces of trash, the same narrative that the media has been running with for years. And honestly, that's where I've been on board with as far as my opinion of this movie as well, and when I saw it, that was the way that I interpreted it. Now, whether that is the case or not, I don't know, and whether Todd Phillips will actually say, I also don't know. But what this guy is insinuating is that actually we, as the fans, comic book fans, are actually just caught in the crossfire, and what Todd Phillips was actually doing is insulting the studio system. This was a jab at the studios, at Hollywood at large. Supposedly, Todd Phillips has issues with all of the ways in which these studio systems work, and actually, apparently, this guy claimed as well that Todd Phillips has had issues with the whole woke filmmaking habit, and since he used to make comedies, it's made so hard for him to make comedies that he decided to pivot and make the first Joker film. And that one was actually supposed to also be an insult towards the studios, but had such great success that it put him in the hole of making another one. And so I can maybe get behind the studio insult thing being real, and with the way that he breaks it down was fairly convincing, and without spoiling the movie and getting really into the nitty-gritty of it, I was fairly sold, and if I can put a link in the show notes, I will, to the video that he made. But essentially, I had to rewind that back, and I was talking with my wife about this, and she made a great point, and she's like, yeah, let's just say for a moment that Todd Phillips was giving a big screw you to the studios and not to the fans. We're just Crossfire. But let's say he was doing that. We then need to remember that this movie cost $200 million to make, and he basically cracked a joke on the studios and basically wanted to insult them with a $200 million insult. Like, that just seems a little ridiculous and borderline offensive and just a serious waste of money, where he could have done it for much, much less, and that $200 million is not on the screen. But also, the other failing here is, if that was his goal, if he was trying to create this piece of art that was very good and very successful, but then also, get his insult in there, he didn't succeed there either. Because the thing is this is not a good movie. It is not well crafted. The story is not good. It is not interesting. And if this is the case, then he made the mistake of letting his meta narrative take over the entire story of the film, to where it's kind of just a pointless mess, and there's no need in its existence, really. So on all accounts, I think it failed, where something like The Shining is still watchable and enjoyable without knowing or understanding the meta narrative. The movie still stands on its own. Now, whether you're a book fan or something along those lines, that's a totally different story. But this is still, I think, an interesting conversation. But if that is what is happening here with this Joker movie, I think it is still a failure, and it is not going to go on to great success down the road, and people appreciate it for what he actually meant to do. And if this was literally like public career offing of himself, basically. And, maybe that's what he did, but if so, this wasn't, I think, the best way to do it, and it wasn't properly executed, and I do not think that this is going to be praised for years and years to come. This is going to be rather forgotten, and is probably going to do some serious damage to Todd Phillips' career. And if he is the real one that this guy is trying to paint him out to be, I really hate it for him that this was such an epic miss. Because, and as you see, actually, the critical score is higher than you would probably expect from what you've heard word of mouth. 42% is fairly high, but I honestly, personally think it's way too high. I gave this movie a 17%. My Friends with Benefits score is a 31%. So out of my friends that reviewed it, it's all the way down to a 31. So still, that seems more fair, at least, than a decent. Decent is being a bit too forgiving. I think we need to keep that thing going down, because this movie's doo-doo. But I hate it for Todd Phillips. If he did mean well, and if this was a screw to the fans, then, then forget about it. But either way, this was a mistake, and I hate it for him. But on the good side, its failure is showing to Hollywood that you can't crap on the fans, and I think that is how they are going to interpret this, and it is going to have to cause the industry to reassess a bit as far as their approach on these movies and these genre things, in which they're putting creators in charge that probably shouldn't be working on these projects, and put more people in positions of control over these type of movies that actually care about the fans, that just want it to succeed on its own merits, that like what the material and subject matter is that they are making. So, I hate it for him. He failed. He messed up big time. But I also love it for the likes of Terrifier 3, because we are getting great examples of success as well, even if this is not my type of movie. So, like I said, Hollywood once again got clowned for another weekend, seeing one success and one failure. And, either way, this weekend I think paints well for those of us who want to see a restructuring with Hollywood, or even better, just a downfall of them and a rising up of something new. And we are seeing more and more of that with these independent creators, and I wish all of these people Godspeed and the best of luck, because they are doing great work and I want to see more of it. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the success of Terrifier 3 and then Joker's failure. And if you saw either of these movies or not, make sure to go to criticalist.com today and drop us a review. And I will be back very soon for the news, whether it's tomorrow or the following day, but I will be here dropping you the hot news as it comes down the pipe. And I will see you again next time. Later.